should say hi to the first keynote what we have today. This person, when I first asked them if they'd be the keynote, was like, "Nah, don't not me, not me." I'm like, "No, actually, you're the perfect person for now." Um, Something along the lines of, we've asked people what it means to actually be geniuses in this work, to actually be forthright and be upfront about how passionate they are about it. Um, Julia is top of mind when it comes to not just librarianship, but also the general work that we must do to move literacy forward, especially in a time when people want us to go back to the days when literacy was illegal in this country and in so many other places around the world. And please understand, too, right? We have a duty to ensure that literacy gets to our youngest. So when we have kids who they say, well, they can't read, it's like, no, actually, they can read, but they can also read you. They can read the way that you don't care about them. They can read the way that you feel about them. So Julia, I've had the honor of actually seeing her like do her work, and she is bona fide the truth. And so um, the formal introduction is that she is a language arts teacher and a librarian in Denver, Colorado. She's an advocate for students and public education. She does frequent speaking and all over the place. She's won multiple awards. She's been at multiple places. Like, she's done all the things. Of course, she's also a co-founder of Disrupt Text. Shout outs to y'all, a grassroots organization doing this work around disrupting literacy norms that are the dominant norms that are out there right now. But more importantly, she's been a pivotal part of what we do here at Educolor, a friend, colleague, someone who I hope that everyone looks up to in this work. So if you would please join me in welcoming the homie, Julia E. Torres. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
I'm here. Hello. I'm here with you. And LeVar Burton is here with us too. Woo. Okay. I just want to celebrate the fact that we are here in community after all this time and through all of this. We are here together to celebrate learning, celebrate community, to celebrate our young people, to learn a little bit together. And I'm excited that I get to kick things off. This day is going to be amazing. I look forward to it every year. It just gets better every year. So I'm honored to be able to be a part of it. And Jose, when I listen to you saying those words, all I can think about is when we met at South by Southwest and I came walking down the street. I didn't know you, you didn't know me. And here we are all these years later, you know? It's been a journey. It's been a journey. I want to thank you for sticking by me, homie. Thank you.
All day.
So, shouts to the team that are behind the scenes today. Lorena, Yamil, and Hema are out there doing the most. So, please make sure to give them some extra love. And without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get started. I hope that I'm doing this correctly. I'm always a little nervous that I'm not. But somebody please let me know if anything needs to change. All right. So we're going to start off with this title: Passing the Torch, Bringing the Light, Guiding Each Other Toward a Brighter Future. I always think about whether the titles that we give things are going to be reflective of the content, because you always want to make sure that what you signed up for is what you get. And so we're going to talk today about hopefully where we've been, where we are, and then hopefully where we can go forward. Lorena, I chose, she says in the chat, okay, picture. I chose I chose just a picture that I took just recently in front of a street. It's called Rua Primeiro de Maio, and it's in Portugal, and that means the street of the 1st of May, or 1st of May Street, and that's their Labor Day. And I thought it was appropriate because many of us have been struggling with our relationship to work and labor right now, especially teachers. And some of us feel like we are coming from an abusive relationship, you know? So I want to go back and kind of kick things off with Queen Latifah. Those of you that are familiar with this song know that she does talk about what it is to be in an unhealthy and abusive relationship. And for many of us, the school system and what it has become, it has been likened to an abusive relationship. How does one heal? How do you operate within it if you feel that you must, in a way that minimizes harm? And as Patrick mentioned in the chat there too, sustains you. How can you stay sustained? What's longevity going to be about? Queen Latifah says, I hit the bottom. There ain't nowhere else to go but up. Bad days at work give you an attitude and you erupt. And let me tell you how many days this past year and the year before, this past year was really intense. So I just want to shout out everybody in education who gave their all for the betterment of our young people in this past year during some really challenging conditions. I want to encourage you to listen to Queen Latifah when you can for that uplifting and also that solidarity. But also just remember that, you know, we are better together. And Jose, I think all of the Educolor community is really good at reminding me about the strength that comes from being in community. And I love this community. It is by far the one that has sustained me and kept me in the movement. I would not be here today without Educolor. So I want to say that. One of the things that I did that also sustained me, and one of the things I've been trying to do, is to continue to find joy. So here's a QR code in an article that you can just save on your phone. You could read it later if you would like to. One of the things that I want you to think about is how it felt to be a child. If you can go back, just kind of in your mind, think about, if you can, a joyful, carefree moment. I was talking to someone not too long ago about double dutch, because kids, they were like, did you really do that? Yes, we did that. Many people still do. But you know, you had your friends and you had the jump ropes. And recently, today, I was talking to my son about going roller skating again. We have all summer long been trying to go to the roller rink as much as possible. So this article right here talks about how learning to roller skate helped this young lady connect with a piece of LA Black culture. And when my son and I went to the roller rink, it was so fun. I had these rose gold roller skates that I was wearing, and it was just really nice to be able to skate around in the rink, and I just felt carefree. And when the music is good, I mean, that just brings so much joy to you. So when you're feeling like life has just got it out for you, and when you're feeling like, you know, nobody really truly understands what it's like to be in your shoes, throw on a pair of skates, maybe. Think about going back to the days when you were younger, if you did double dutch. But I'd like you to think about the things that you enjoyed when you were really small. And if possible, enjoy them with somebody small too. I think that's a way to get back some of the joy that's been taken from us in the last few years. One of the things, another thing, a third thing that I love to do, I love to travel, I love to roller skate, I love to dance. And I have been dancing samba throughout the year. And one of the things that I heard in our last, we had a showcase where we were all in it doing the numbers that we learned. And one of the people said, when we misstep, that's just the creator's way of reminding us of our humanity. She was representing a group of Native American dancers. And as some of you may know, dance in many Native American tribal societies is a form of healing, a form of medicine, dance and music. So this QR code will take you to some curriculum where you can learn a little bit more about various Indian nations. What I really like about the Yakima Indian Nation is that they have a library that I think should be a model for us all. It's so powerful, and it preserves the knowledge of elders in a way that respects their sacred knowledge as something that should be revered by those who are younger. And so I just wanted to put this QR code up there in recognition of the tribal nations that are still present, still here today. We can and should be teaching about them. And if we do not have the resources to do that, here is one place that you could go. This is one place where I go. And I would encourage you to check out the essay Beyond Land Acknowledgement, because though we have been in the practice of doing land acknowledgements lately, I almost feel like we are still in the very baby early stages of true reparations for our Native American brothers and sisters. And I feel like we have got to do better, and we can do better. And this website is the Native Governance website. It's got a lot of really good resources for how to do that. So we're going to go further back in time, beyond Queen Latifah, beyond your childhood. We're going to go much, much, much further back, before any of us here. I was blessed with a trip to Portugal. I've been able to go twice this year. And I went to, just recently, to the university at Coimbra. It's one of the oldest universities in the Western world. And when I say the Western world, I say that we don't necessarily know all of the schools of learning that existed on the African continent, in the Eastern world. We don't know necessarily what they looked like. And when I say we, I mean Westerners. So we focus a lot on Western schools of thought. And we like to say things like, this is the oldest library or the oldest university, when that's not necessarily true. The reason that I took these pictures and put them in here is that this university at Coimbra, it had, when you go into the entrance, it was built on the land where the Moors were. So it was a Moorish fort originally. And then the Moors were pushed out, and they were at the time, Spaniards came in, and people from Galicia and whatnot, they came in and started to build this university town. At first, knowledge was only kept among the clergy. So everything happened in Latin, which kept the common people from being able to learn. Nowadays, what this looks like is you have some Moorish tile work that is found all over Portugal. And many people think that that's just a Portuguese thing, when it started in North Africa. So that's just one example of how appropriation works over time. People forget the past and they forget their origins. And so when we think about what we're going to do this upcoming year, how we're going to stay sustained in the work, one of the things that is sustaining me, keeping me curious, is thinking about the past and how lessons from the past, people from the past, architecture, art from the past, stories from the past can propel us as we move forward. So I wanted to show you these slides just to help you think about, where are we situated geographically? What historical precedent are we dealing with that still kind of infiltrates our society today? If you're not in North America, you might be unfamiliar with this colonial class structure. This is how things operated in the Americas, and it is largely how things operate today. When we think about social hierarchy, the people at the very top were the peninsulares. So they were Spaniards born in Spain. Underneath that, it would be the Creoles. So people born in New Spain of Spanish parents. Now, this was a little different if you were in New Orleans, where there were French at different times. The French people were, New Orleans was a French colony. Same thing with certain territories in Canada. They belong to the French. So you can replace Spaniards with French, but still some European power. And then there were the mestizos, born of Spanish and Native American Indian parents, Native Americans, and then enslaved Africans, brought from Africa and the Caribbean. So you can see this social hierarchy. When we think about what this has to do with what we are doing now, in every aspect of education, we are still socially, and even, you could say, if grades are the academic currency, we stratify our students in this way. At the very top, you might substitute the peninsulares for the people who are born in whatever land. Those who are the Creoles might be the people who are, I moved down too quickly. But what I'm trying to say here is that this social hierarchy still exists, and the way that we treat children in our school system is still largely based on this structure. So if we want to break it apart, we've got to start looking at it and thinking about what each group has contributed to the wealth of each society that we are in. This happened in the Philippines. This happened in, there was a large group of Japanese and Italian workers that came to Brazil. Lots of people don't know that, but that changed things up as well. So one of the things that I really just want to think about for myself as I'm going forward this year are the contributions of each of these groups to the larger society. What have they done to help us be the rich society that we are today? Because historically, education has been used as a tool of oppression and of colonization. So we can look at certain African nations where young people were told, you are not allowed to speak your native tribal language. You need to learn English, for example, or Dutch or French, whatever the language of the colonizer was. And young children were taught to shame one another for speaking other languages. We still do this today in school, in many forms and in many places. So that, unbreaking or dismantling of the linguistic prejudice that we see, that has to happen. But it also has to happen when we are just looking at the stratification of our society and disregarding the contributions of people from every group. We need to push down the pyramid a little bit and look at those contributions, and librarians can help us do that. So in the Joanina Library, which was at the University at Coimbra, there is a section that has a bunch of books that say Index Librorum Prohibitor. And that's Latin for basically the forbidden section, or these are the banned books. This is the knowledge. This is the place you wanted to go. And this is the area where historically the monks, or those who could read Latin, the priests, people who belong to the church, they would keep the good stuff from the common people. And so maybe this is ringing familiar to you today as we are thinking about the books that are being banned and the ideologies that are being canceled, or where people are trying to cancel ideologies in the States, in the United States, and really the world, because I hear it's happening all around us. Sarah, thank you so much for dropping that quote in. History is not the past, it is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history. If we pretend otherwise, we are literally criminals. Beautiful, beautiful. I love that. I love James Baldwin, and I'm so grateful for the fact that we do still have a lot of the historical documents that we could look at and research to try to discover or uncover a lot of our past. Going back to what I talked about before on the Yakima Indian Reservation, their library has they have these vaults, and in the vaults, they have knowledge bundles where elders contributed verbally stories about all kinds of things, from sacred medicine to hunting and fishing sites. And they have oral recordings. The only people who can access them are elders from their tribe. So they're keeping the knowledge as pristine as possible so that it doesn't get corrupted or transferred somewhere and lost forever. But I think that, we can and should dive into these stories from our elders a little bit more. And we can and should look to our past in order to inform our present. So that's a lot of the work that I'm trying to do. And when we think about the banned books section, we've really just got to remind people that this is not new, that this is something that has always been done. Black people in the Americas, in this part of the world, were forbidden to read for hundreds of years. So, it's a miracle whenever any young person, specifically a person who identifies as one of us of the global majority, not only learns to read, but learns to love it and share it and write it and contribute to possibly one day the banned bookshelf, or contribute works to capture the story of their lived experience in their time and place. So now we're going to move a little bit forward. I would like, it's a little bit early, but if she's there, I would like to invite Jacqueline Woodson to join us. She is a friend of mine. She is a person I greatly admire and respect. I got the privilege and honor of getting an email one day. I was sitting at my desk and it said, it said urgent. We need someone to be in conversation with Jacqueline Woodson at the tattered cover. And I was like, me, pick me. So I was super excited to be able to do that. And there's a little picture of the two of us in conversation. That day we were talking about Red at the Bone. And so I just wanted to welcome you, Jackie. Thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about that juncture between past and present, what we can learn from those who've come before us, and what we are continuing to hope to contribute to those who will come after us.
Thanks, Julia. I swear I could listen to you talk forever. I'm sitting here with all my notes. This is amazing. I'm so glad to be here with all of y'all. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for coming. I wanted to ask you, just before we move on, a little bit about these two books, just about your inspiration. Did you have any mentoring during this process? What have you had mentors along the way that have kind of shaped your thinking as you grew into your writer self?
It's it's interesting, I look back and think as I'm listening, as I'm reading the comments from our people and just knowing that educolor exists, right? I think that for me growing up, there were not a lot of teachers of color. I think in my primary years, I had two, my kindergarten teacher, Miss Kaufman, and then a teacher, Miss Hyde, who left halfway through the school year because she was pregnant. And when I think about the mentors, so many of them came from the books I read, right? So reading James Baldwin, reading Rosa Gee, reading Toni Morrison and Langston Hughes and Eloise Greenfield and Virginia Hamilton. And then as a young writer, meeting those people, meeting Eloise Greenfield, meeting Virginia Hamilton and Arnold Adolph, meeting the Dillons and the McKissicks, and these writers of color, excuse me, who would eventually lift me up. And of course, as we talked about earlier, Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, who changed the narrative of young people's literature with her work around multicultural literature and the necessity for it in the classroom. So I would have to say I'm standing on so many shoulders. The teachers who, Jose earlier, what he had said about kids being told they can't read, and actually reading the people and seeing that reading the teachers and seeing that they're not seeing the students for who they are. And for the few teachers who did see that I had something that was not necessarily an academic brilliance, but that there was some passion inside of me, and recognizing that passion recognized is brilliance, right?
Yes.
Because it becomes nurtured. So the list is long of people who eventually were able to help me along that route, including the people who helped me by saying I couldn't, right? How dare someone say no to a child who knows that they
Wow.
can?
Yeah.
So
That's a really good point. Two of the things you said really hit me. That when we read, in a way, not only is that a mentor text for our writer selves that are growing within us,
mhm,
but I heard someone say at a lecture that I was attending in Antwerp this summer, she said the birth of the reader is the death of the writer. In a way, it was like, when you've completed the story and you've contributed your part, that's the time when the reader is born, and
mhm,
that's the time when the story takes on the meaning that the reader gives to it, in a way. So if you and I were to sit down, and I can't remember everything that we said about Red at the Bone that day, but I do remember saying, and I still feel this way, that it's a wonderful mentor text. And you were a mentor for me with that text because it helped me to think more clearly about my own writing. Do I waste words? Do
mhm,
I have meaningful phrases and sentences? And I don't know what your process is like. I
mhm,
don't know if you get it all out there and just refine, refine, refine. But for those of you who have not read Read at the Bone yet, please do. And Jackie, I'd love just to hear from you about the process of bringing
mhm.
these books into the world.
Oh, I am always happy to talk about the process, especially for Red at the Bone. I was talking to some friends, some family about too much information, right? When you're writing, and you have all these adjectives, right? It's like she was wearing an orange dress and a blue hat and red shoes. I'm like, what does that have to do with the story? Like, is this orange dress going to pay off? And I think I'm constantly thinking about that. I'm constantly thinking about my own intentionality in terms of who I am as a Black woman who's queer, who's a mom, who's, a New Yorker and a Southerner and a child of the Great Migration, like all of these selves, and that impact on the narrative and the need for that narrative inside my story. So when I look at something like Red at the Bone, I knew I wanted to tell the story of economic classes crossing. I knew I wanted to tell the story of how Black communities did and continue to lose economic wealth because of because of plunder, basically. And I knew I wanted to start it in the middle. So it opens up with, but that afternoon there was an orchestra playing. So with that first word, you're not coming into the beginning of a story, because no story starts at the beginning, right?
Right.
And so just being constantly intentional about how I'm trying to tell that story, and how also there's an urgency to our narratives as people of the global majority, right? These stories have too long been silenced, and they need to be here now.
Yeah.
And that energy is, for me, becomes a part of the story. So when I was writing Red at the Bone, I always say I write because I have questions, not because I have the answers. And there were questions about what does it mean to be a Black teenager who gets pregnant and actually has a support system, right? Because our narrative is constantly like the you get pregnant and your life is over, and and this is what happens in communities of color. I mean, I could just go deep into that, but I'm not going to. But when I sit down to write, I write it. I read it out loud. It has to sound a certain way. I can hear the extra words as I'm reading. I get rid of those. And so much for me is a paring down and a paying attention to white space. I think for so many, that white space is not listened to, except when you're a poet, right? You understand that white space is a place to pause, is a place to bring your own narrative in, is a place to just sit with story. And I'm paying attention to it as I'm writing it on the page. And with The World Belonged to Us, that was just for me wanting to play, and especially in these times when everything is so hard, right?
Yes.
And I love that you threw Queen Latifah up there, because I think about teachers every day. I think about the warriors going into these classrooms. I was talking to kids, and we were on Zoom. They had masks, some had their cameras off, and I was like, oh, what fresh hell is this? Like, there's so much going on. And it's so deeply hard. And so for me, I needed to write a narrative where we just remembered playing, we just remembered joy, we just remembered collaborative effort in play. And so when you were talking about double dutch, because I'm double dutch to the bone, I will jump double dutch anytime. I'm that old lady now that I see people jump turning ropes. I'm like, can I get in? Can I get
love
in?
it.
So
I'm with it. Yes.
but when you think of something like double dutch, right? Everybody needs to be in sync with each other, and it's a collective activity, because if you have someone that can't turn, you can't jump.
Right.
And so it's this way in which we're all working together for this greater good of the game of double dutch. And it's also so interesting because it's getting erased because of the history of how we learn to play, right? First, you were a young girl and you sat on the curb, and they're like, no, you can't play because you can't jump and you can't turn. So you watched the older girls do it, and you mimicked it with your younger girls. And eventually someone let you turn the rope, and they stood behind you and helped you turn, so you weren't double-handed. And then eventually they let your hands go, and you were doing it on your own. And then you eventually started learning to fly in the ropes, but you wouldn't have been able to do it if you hadn't seen those older girls do it and mimic their actions. But that's gone away, right? And also for me as a child, when grown-ups saw you on the sidewalk jumping, they walked into the street. and they were like, okay, this is your space, but that doesn't happen anymore. They're like, these damn kids, get out of my way. And so thinking about young people and the struggles they're having now, I was just like, I need to write about a time when it was all about the joy. So I
Yes,
can
and
go
that
on.
brought it back to us.
Mhm.
Like that brings it back to us, and we need that right now.
Oh God, yes.
So I'm so happy that book is in the world and that I'll be able to share it. I might just share it with my kids right away when we get back, even though they're in 10th grade. I love sharing picture books with older
Thank
kids,
you. Thank
you
you.
know.
It's such a way. I don't know why people don't do it more because it's such a way of teaching writing, right? You have in 32 pages, beginning, middle, and end, you have a character arc, you have a story, you have an intentionality to words and detail. It's all there. And you don't have to read 300 pages to learn it. So I am all about teaching through picture books.
I agree. And I think it's a low pressure, low stress way for someone
Yes.
to learn
Yeah.
lessons about the world and themselves. And
Mhm.
you know what, when you were talking a little bit about the mentorship that goes along with teaching one another to do things by example, I was thinking about when I was trying to get this part of this dance that was choreographed, and I was trying to get it down, and I just couldn't get it. I couldn't get it, and I didn't want to be that person who was doing the combination, messing it up for everyone, because I'm that person
Yes.
with my right hand up when everybody else has their left one up. You know, I didn't want to be that person. And so these girls who dance with me, they stood behind me, and as many times as I wanted, they kept pushing it back and doing the same
Wow.
part of the song and the same steps and just doing it right beside me as
Mhm.
many times as I needed. And this was just a few hours before the performance, but I was able to really get strength from that community. And they said there was no shame, there was no, you know,
Mhm.
humiliation, there was no, well, you can't get this, so you're going to make the rest of us look bad. It
Mhm.
was just, we've all been there. And I remember one of them saying, we all have that one part of the dance that we just can't get, you know? And we all have our real writing
Amazing.
quirks that
Mhm.
we just can't seem to shake sometimes, you
That's
know?
amazing.
So,
Wow.
yeah, I think that it's good and important and necessary for our young people who spent 2 years almost in
Mhm.
isolation from one another to learn about the strength that comes from being willing to not only pass the torch, but receive it. Be
Mhm.
willing to receive the learning from watching other people and how they work, how they learn, how they write, how they read even. You know, how does someone get through a book start to finish if you're not there? How does someone teach you
Yeah.
to do that? You know?
Oh man. Kudos to
Well,
y'all.
I've got a few questions. I'm going to see if I
Mhm.
can go back to the slides and just put a few questions up. Thank you very much. I think that we've talked about lessons that we've learned from them.
Mhm.
Are any of these left unsaid before we take questions from the audience?
Uh, I love the question of how can we best honor the people who came before us, who were our mentors. I just think that say their names, right? We think of I'm blanking on her name, but who told us the importance of citing Black women. She started the Cite Black Women hashtag, and I hate that I'm blanking on her name. But I do think it's important that we continue to say the names of the people who have mentored us. Like I look at something like Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop talking about the importance of mirrors and windows, and I'll go on to Twitter and I'll see mirrors and windows all over the place, but not her name. And that the world is constantly trying to erase us. And so for me, saying the names of the teachers, of the mentors, of the writers who gave us the strength to keep moving is so important for me.
I think you're right. Saying their name, remembering to lift whatever they've done from,
Hmm.
people might relegate it to the past, but if
Hmm.
it inspired you a long time ago, that doesn't mean it won't inspire someone anew and
Hmm.
in a fresh way in the future or right now in the
Hmm.
present. So I think we were talking not too long ago, you and I, about Augusta Baker and Audre Lorde, and
Hmm.
how Audre Lorde thanked Augusta Baker for teaching her how to read.
Yes.
And I mean, and then
Amazing.
because of that, we have all of these works from Audre Lorde,
Hmm.
you know? So it is a circle.
Such a circle. Let's keep it from being unbroken.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's see what the questions are in the chat. Lorena's going to get one for us. It says Dr. Britt Williams and Dr. Joan Collier started Sight Assista. So we'll have to remember those.
Thank you.
Any questions for us? Now is your time. Anybody?
There's one from Lorena, right?
Yes. There are differing points of view on how authors respond to the book bannings. Some say it leads to more visibility. Some say it leads to stigma and negativity. What is your take?
That's a great question. I think it's a combination. It's interesting now. I was talking to Ta-Nehisi Coates, who wrote Between the World and Me, and he was saying in terms of that book, the pushing the censorship of it has caused sales to soar, and it's considered an adult book. And for what's happening in the world of young people's literature, not only is this for the first time that it's really being legislated, right, to keep these books out of the classroom, but also teachers don't have that freedom, as you know, to push past censorship that way. And so for us, it's a different thing. It is books are being kept out of the classroom. I don't know what's happening in sales because I don't follow that so much. But what I do know is I get letters from teachers saying, if I bring these books into the classroom, I risk getting fired, and that's huge. And for me, do I spend a whole lot of time thinking about that as I write? I don't, because this isn't new in some ways, except for the legislating part of it. But I have to keep writing, so it's complicated. It's complicated.
So one of the things that leads me to wonder about is whether, and you don't have to answer this if you're not comfortable, of course, but has anyone ever banned any of your books?
Brown Girl Dreaming is banned. Brown Girl Dreaming is on the list. Brown Girl Dreaming, the story of Ruby Bridges, anything, what they're going after is anything that makes white kids feel bad or invisible. And so, I didn't know I was banned. I remember getting a call from Judy Blume about being in this anthology, and it was an anthology called The Places That I Never Meant to Be. And I was like, nobody's challenged my books. And she's like, oh yes, they have. And I didn't know, because no one's calling up Jacqueline Woodson saying, yo, we're challenging your book today in Texas or wherever. And she's like, no, your books are challenged. And then I started deep diving and realizing from the Notebooks of Melanin Sun, If You Come Softly, because of the interracial relationship. I mean, the stuff that gets challenged, Miracles Boys, my books get challenged all the time. And thankfully, going back to the young people are like, wait, that book is banned. Let me see what's up with that. Let me find that book and read it. So there's that. I'm sorry, I realized I didn't answer the part about stigma. I don't think there's a stigma, because I think for so many of us, we have our villages of people of the global community behind us. So I think, I don't see it as us getting stigmatized for that. It's just, I think a lot of this country fortunately understands what this banning is about, that it's about a silencing of history, and it's about an attempt to rewrite American history.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that it's so important to look to the lessons of the past and see how people handled this, because it does seem to be cyclical, and it does seem to be a pattern. Anytime folks who look like us start to get a little bit more free, then people start cracking down, and start wanting to keep young people from having access to the stories of people around them. Now, the one difference is, those of you who are looking at the National Education Statistics website on a fairly regular basis, and it's depressing, so I only look at it off and on. But this year, I do know that this year, 2022, because I've been looking forward to it, was the year that was projected as the year that more students in American public schools would identify as mixed race or not white than white. So there are more students identifying as everything else, people of the global majority, than there are white students in American public schools. So that may make it harder for people to shut out the stories of our people. I do see a question from Ms. Zakia Jackson. It says, how do you encourage people of the global majority who are scared to be fully themselves in hostile conditions?
Hmm. That's I mean, we can both answer that, right?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. You need your people, you need your village, and I'm not sure what the fear is, what part of the self one is afraid of being. Is it the outspoken self? Is it the queer self? Is it the I don't know that. For me, I can talk about my personal experiences that here in Brooklyn, I have my village of people who hold me up, um and I can't imagine living a half life where some part of me has to remain hidden. That would just eat me up inside. So at the end of the day, my own self-worth and mental health is what keeps me moving forward and out and being my full self, because I the final judge is God. Like whoever God is to you, and these small minds around us that are silencing us, why give them that power? That's what I say every day. I remember when the whole National Book Awards thing happened and people kept saying, well, he took all your power. It's like, no, he didn't. Like, my power is my own. Like, no one can take that away. And so that's what I see. And but just keep the people who hold you up close. It's so important. And life is so damn short, right? So to have to walk through the world with the regret of having to hide some part of yourself just feels tragic.
It is. It is. And I think that one of the things that I'm learning about this generation of young people is they're less willing to do that. I
Oh
think
goodness,
they're
yes.
much less willing to hide parts of themselves for other people's comfort.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things I love about them the most.
Oh man, and they will snatch you if you try.
Yes,
They will snatch you if you mess up a pronoun or mess up.
yes,
And I
yes.
love it. I'm here for it so hard.
And they're like, excuse me?
Yes,
You
yes.
just said what? I mean, they will absolutely put you in your place.
They really will. We were watching, my daughter's 20, and my son's 14. And during the pandemic, they were a little bit young, obviously. We were watching the Freddie Mercury movie, the Queen movie, about the singing group. Um, and he was closeted during his days, in the 80s or 90s, whenever Queen was big, the group was big. And he was also HIV positive. And my kids were like, but wait, why isn't he telling people he's gay? We're like, well, at that time, people would be, would reject him. And they're like, what are you talking about? Like they could not wrap their mind around the idea of homophobia.
Which
And
is
someone,
beautiful,
I know,
right?
but, yeah, but we had to go back to some really remedial language to explain. And I was like, okay, this is what we fought for, right? This
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
they're like, oh God, you guys were so dumb back in the day. Like they could not get it.
And that's the world that we want.
Uh-huh.
That's the
Hmm.
future that we
Hmm.
want. So let us not roll things back now. One
So
last
true.
question before we move forward. From Lorena, she says, what is your take on making space for literature by BIPOC, queer, and other marginalized voices? Because Disrupt Text has been sort of argued against, judged, critiqued, what have you, for adding the element of racial justice to the conversation about the classics. And people say that we're pushing aside the classics to make room for BIPOC works by BIPOC, queer, and other marginalized voices. So what is your take on that?
Oh goodness. Talk about remedial conversation.
Right, right.
Like there is space for all of it. And I'm some of the canon doesn't need to be there. We've evolved. And it's time to tell the truth. It's time to tell the stories that are necessary to represent this country. So I really, and I guess I curate my world in a certain way, but I feel like this is not even a conversation. This is a conversation white folks should be having among themselves. We shouldn't have to be doing this explaining in this conversation because we've done this work already. We've explained, we understand why these books need to be in curriculum and in the narrative. And if people don't, I'm not here I'm not here to explain it. I just know that this is the truth, that what we're trying to do here is the truth.
And please read, folks. Like,
Yes.
here's the thing. I cannot imagine giving someone, great expectations, and that's their first entry into reading. That's what people are trying to do effectively. And you need to start with something that you relate to and that you enjoy, that brings joy first. And I don't think that some of the works that people are trying to force feed young people in every grade level belong in those grade levels. I do believe in giving students choice as well.
And we've changed. I mean, students read differently. When Great Expectations was written, we didn't have TikTok, we didn't have Twitter, we didn't have, word processing. The way kids were still being taught cursive, like the way that young people read and process information is very different. I even look at the rhythm of sentences. Like if I pick up a book and it has like 4 long sentences and doesn't have like 1 long sentence, 2 short ones, and a certain kind of rhythm, my brain processes it differently. And so when we look at 21st century kids, who there is a way in which they can get that history and all of that information, but no, writing is different now. So for me, some part of me is like, okay, just bring them a scroll to read, right? Like, what are we trying to do here?
Yes, exactly. And then with no decoding tools, just throwing it at them. We do have some questions that are in the chat. If you have time to answer them, typing in answers, feel free. I'm going to put us on slides mode just to cover 2 last slides before we wrap up.
Oh, good. Because I was just going to say, what about the Adrienne Marie Brown books? Like,
it's there. It's coming up. It's coming up. Thank you so much. So this is the slide that a lot of folks tend to enjoy. It's the one where we give book recommendations. I want to recommend The Spirit of Our Work, Cynthia B. Dillard, Black Women Teachers Remember. So if we're talking about mentorship and if we're talking about the past and how we can learn from it to inform our present, that'll be the book for that. Outliers is a book that by Malcolm Gladwell is a book that kids always ask me for whatever reason. So I think that as we help define success for and with students, I think we need to lean into helping them define success for themselves rather than defining what it looks like on our own. And then the Yoga Sutras I just love because there are holistic ideas that could apply to life in general, not just school. And I think that, a lot of people in the Western world like to say they practice yoga, but do they read about where some of the Yoga Sutras originated? I'm not so sure that they do. And then Adrienne Marie Brown has the Emergent series. There are a series of books written by different authors, and one is called We Will Not Cancel Us and Other Dreams of Transformative Justice. That's a beautiful, beautiful book for folks who are trying to look for an alternative to cancel culture. How do we navigate all of the legacy of colonization and white supremacy without just canceling and then moving on? And then the last one is The Light We Give from Simran Singh. It is How Sikh Wisdom Can Transform Your Life. He is such a force, I think. And I'm really looking forward to reading this with kids to see what they think. This one is all about how we can come forward from dark times and look to sources of light. And he, of course, leans on his traditions, which are Sikh wisdom. But again, that idea of bringing the past into the present. Okay. I need to, I think, move to the last slide because we're out of time. But Jackie, thank you for joining me and thank you for being in conversation, for being part of the EduColor community today. Really, it's just been an honor to be able to see you, but I will be honest, it's not as good as seeing you in person.
I know.
I miss you, and I'm very, very glad you got to see Jose, but I look forward to the next time when we can see each other.
Oh man, we need to have a dance party like that one that Jose and I were at. But this has been awesome. I so appreciate all of y'all and the work you're doing to change the world. Thank you. And if people had questions that I didn't get to answer, if you want to just send me an email with the questions, I'm happy to type up answers and get it back to someone. So, because I'm here for y'all. I'm here.
Thank you. And you showed it. Your words and your actions matched, and we are grateful. I'm just happy to see your face and to see your smile and to be able to present with you for a minute.
Same.
Thank you.
Thanks. Stay safe, y'all. You're on mute, Jose.
Of course, of course. Beautiful people in the comments, please
Thank
give
you.
it up for
Thank you.
the Julia Torres, our first keynote of today, and of course, the Jacqueline Woodson. Thank you so
Thank
much.